Just very quickly, what will be done for young people who are renting? But of course we know it's not even just young people who are renting. I'll go to you, Ivana, this time first. What would you be saying to renters?
Well, congratulations, Alana, and Maeve, thank you for the question. I represent a constituency, Dublin Bay South, where nearly half of all households are in the private rental sector, so it's a huge issue in our constituency. Average rents in Dublin, over €2,000 per month, so clearly that is not sustainable. What we in Labour are proposing is, first of all, to protect renters' rights. I've already brought forward a bill 3 years ago now that would provide for security of tenure. We've proposed an end to no-fault evictions, that is evictions where the tenant is not at fault, and indeed a 3-year rent freeze. And of course, what we're also proposing is a rent-to-buy scheme that would help people who are renting to save towards a deposit by giving people back a portion of the money they've spent in rent. We'd start with cost rental, and we'd see for people who've been in cost rental for 3 years that they would then get up to 30,000 back towards a deposit. So we believe these are constructive ways to help and support renters, younger renters, also older renters. I meet people who are renting well into older age and who are, again, lack any sort of security of tenure in their homes. This is all about, though, ensuring there's greater supply of homes, greater supply of affordable homes to buy and to rent. And it's about ensuring security for all of us, security for everyone to be able to get a home of their own, Katie. That's absolutely essential to our Labour mission.
Paschal Donohoe, rents have increased by 117% since 2011, since you first came into power.
Of course, I'm so much aware of what has been the impact of increasing rents, what that has meant for tenants, what that has meant for their feelings about their ability to be able to own a home and continue to have a home they can rent. Of course, I understand all of that. And my understanding of it is what motivates me to try and make a difference to improve it. So what is the answer back? What are the answers that I would offer both of you? Firstly, it is the Land Development Agency that was set up by Fine Gael that has been further funded by this government to support this in making more cost rental available.
Can I ask you about the cost rental targets? Because I was surprised that only 18,000, this is under Housing for All, 18,000 cost rental by 2030. It's a drop in the ocean.
But we want to deliver more cost rental, but it's also why we need the private sector. It is also why we need smaller landlords to play a role in relation to it. And that is why we have, over time, to find ways to make that rent affordable. That's why I brought in a rent tax credit. That's why it has been improved. And that's why we would look to improve it again in the years ahead.
What is the rent tax credit you're proposing?
So we'll be outlining that in our manifesto very, very shortly. I've already increased it as a Minister for Finance. We're working on it at the moment, but it is going to obviously be an increase. And the reason why it will be an increase is I brought that rent tax credit in. But what we will need to do is, in addition to that, help you by making sure the cost rental accommodation that's there only grows in the future, but we have a diversity of landlords that can add to it.
I don't want to cut across, but very quickly, have you set your face against further rent freezes and eviction bans?
Well, there's a rent pressure zone in at the moment. I know it's a complex argument to make. I want to answer it. So I know it's a very complex argument to make regarding why I'm saying there should not be a complete ban on evictions. The reason for that is I want more landlords. I want more private landlords, particularly small ones, to decide to become landlords in the future, to increase the supply of rental accommodation. And it becomes really hard to try and get somebody to become a landlord if you're saying to them, under no circumstances can you ever do anything different with your property.
Rory
it's a no-fault eviction.
Can you just respond to that? Because it is a factor out there. We do hear landlords saying that the uncertainty in the private rental sector is driving them out of it.
Well, it's not actually true. The number of landlords registered actually increased last year. And when we look at what's actually needed for renters, it is security of tenure, which is a ban on no-fault evictions. Currently, in most European countries, you cannot evict someone that is paying the rent, that is doing nothing wrong. In this country, we still have that situation. Renters don't have proper security of tenure. What we need is not more institutional landlords, which Paschal and Fine Gael brought into the country, and you mentioned Michael Noonan earlier, and you both continue to give them tax breaks through the Real Estate Investment Trust tax break. What we would do is build much more affordable rental, 25,000 affordable cost rental homes is what we're proposing to do in our plan. And also, as I said earlier...
That's over the 5-year
That's
term.
over the 5 years. And also the affordable purchase. What we think is needed is actually a renter's charter, and we're going to be launching one on Wednesday, which is based around making the private rental sector somewhere where people can live securely. Renters are living in absolute terror, and I speak to them every day.
What when you say a charter, what?
So a charter would set out basically things like that security of tenure, that they actually have that properly, a 3-year rent freeze, so the rents are actually being controlled across the board, things like the Residential Tenancies Board being given proper resources, because you talk to tenants, they're terrified about complaining about mould growing, about, they can't put a picture up on the wall. They feel completely in a situation of powerlessness, because if they say anything, the landlord might evict them. And the Residential Tenancies Board could be playing a much greater role in supporting tenants and also actually in supporting landlords. There's a lot of things that could be done in terms of making the rental sector a place where people can have a home, because renters have just as much a right to housing and a right to live in a home as anybody else.
OK, thank you. Richard, Boyd Barrett.
OK, the excuse about the eviction ban just doesn't stack up, because in fact there are far more people living in rental property today than there was 10 or 15 years ago. The private rented sector has massively expanded. And as Rory has said, in the rest of Europe, you can't be evicted if you do nothing wrong. Now, why should tenants in this country have any less rights than they do almost everywhere else in Europe? It's because the government are dancing to the tune of the landlords. And the state is going to have to build affordable housing on scale. And I would say the cost rental, of course, for anybody who gets it, there's not enough of it. That's why there's a lottery. And so you're lucky if you get it. We need a hell of a lot more. But there's also a problem with the affordability, because if you're 2 income earners, $1,200 is affordable. If you're a single income family, it's not affordable. And but I've been saying you should change it, but you haven't changed it. It should be a proportion of people's income that is affordable, but it isn't. And what happens if somebody loses their job in Alana's family, and where they suddenly don't have the income to pay the $1,200? It needs to be a proportion of their income. I'd be quite concerned that the government haven't even thought that through in terms of making sure that some of the people, or if their income drops below a level or goes above a level, how is it going to work? So it should be a proportion of people's income rather than based on the costs, which also are being dictated by what the private developers build a cost rental at. Okay. Because it's private developers who are still setting the price of the construction of a lot of these units. OK,
Darragh O'Brien, I just want to put you, I did cite the figure since 2011, 117% increase in rents. Just since you've been minister, they've gone up by 31%.
Well, firstly, to say to Alana, look, congratulations. And I brought in cost rental. There are over 2,000 households now in cost rental. And actually we are...
Well, the figure I had was 1,750. No, there's 2,000.
It's 2,000 and there's 8,000.
It's not a lot though, is it?
No, but from nothing. It didn't exist, cost rental, actually 3 years ago. We brought in the Affordable Housing Act, which Rory and the SOC Dems...
Wasn't this a Green Party policy?
It was a government policy, but I brought forward the legislation. But I'm just saying that we've 2,000 tenancies in place now. People like Alana who have got secure tenancies, her and her partner Aaron, a minimum 25% below market, and we made changes just very recently to it. And that's why, Maeve, thanks for your question, because renting right now is still really difficult for people because it's not secure. And it's not secure because we don't have enough cost rental. But we're scaling it up, and our plan in my own party, Fianna Fáil, is to deliver between now and 2030 10,000 affordable homes every single year right the way through. We've a massive opportunity with cost rental, and we're delivering a lot of it ourselves, actually, through the local authorities and through the Land Development Agency, and the state will own the property. And we've proven now it can work. 4 or 5 years ago, it didn't exist. Now it does, and of course it takes time to scale it up. But 2,000 households is no small amount. And what I'd also say for renters is to ensure that we've the protections there for them in place, and that we also reduce the cost. So we'll double the renter's tax credit, but most renters want to buy. And a lot of people who are renting...
the renter's tax
yes,
credit.
we will double the rental.
That's in your new manifesto.
And the renters who wish to buy is really important, because right at the very start of this show, we talked about supports for first-time buyers, like the Help to Buy grant of 30,000, like the First Home Scheme, €100,000. And I've met many renters who've used those schemes that Eoin and Rory and Richard would get rid of to get out of a rental trap and to buy
their own homes. But whilst we're doing it, we absolutely can scale. We can scale up cost rental, and we're doing that. And Alana is proof that is in place now, and many hundreds others, and we'll scale that up over the next few years.
Maybe first of all, if I get the opportunity to be the Minister for Housing after this election, we'll do a number of things immediately. The first is we'll put a full month's rent back into your pocket, no less than €1,000 and up to €2,000. But unlike Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, we'll ban rent increases, so you will get the full benefit of that rather than the renters' tax relief going into the landlord's pocket. We will remove sale of property.
Ban rent increases
for 3 years.
For 3 years.
For all existing and
for
new tenancies.
Years.
What we'll also do is remove sale of property as a grounds for an eviction notice, which will reduce evictions by 60% and will ensure minimum standards.
Again, let's just be clear about that, because you're being very specific there.
Yes.
So at the moment you can evict your tenant if you plan to sell your property.
Absolutely.
So you're saying that all landlords now will have to sell their properties with the tenant in situ?
Absolutely, as is the norm in all stable rental economies around the world. But crucially, the vast majority of renters want a pathway out of the private rental sector, more private homes, more social homes, but crucially more cost rental homes. And here's the problem. I've been advocating cost rental for a decade, and I'm delighted for you, absolutely delighted. The problem is, since you got that rental, the cost of cost rental has increased dramatically. So in the Minister's own constituency in O'Devany Gardens, since Paschal...
Sinn Féin were against. Sinn Féin opposed it at every turn.
Katie, can I at least answer the question?
You opposed it at every turn.
Let me say this.
It'd been built years ago if it hadn't been for Sinn Féin.
It would have been built years ago if you had funded it. In O'Devany Gardens, here's the cost of the cost rentals that two will be providing. $1,500 for a 1-bed, $1,700 for a 2-bed, $1,900 for a 3-bed. If I'm the Minister for Housing, not only will we deliver 30,000 cost rental homes out to 2030, but the rents will be at and below €1,000. And how do you know that? Because I've set it out in a detailed housing plan. It is possible, it is doable, but not if Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael get back into government after this election. So if you want a pathway out of the private rental sector, if you want affordable rent, if you want affordable homes, you have to vote for the only party that can put Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael out of government on November 29th.
I wish you had spent so long
and we can deliver genuinely affordable homes. We have campaigned for O'Devany Gardens for 20 years.
Okay, we are...
You refuse to fund it,
we are
and now it's
entirely out of time.